So what is earnest money? What does that term mean? And it's a good question. You get asked that a lot. You look at it and you say, okay, I'm going to make an offer, and we'll say we're going to make an offer for a $600,000 home. What is the amount of earnest money that I should indicate on the contract that I'm going to allocate down for this purchase? And answer, it's all over the place. There are people that say 1% of the purchase price would be a good gesture of earnest money to put down in the contract. And I can't fault that. I think that's probably pretty fair. It basically shows that you as a buyer are putting down some money, earnest money, to open up an escrow to show that you're committed to the transaction. And while the buyer is very well protected from contingencies in most markets, the earnest money is there in case of true buyer default that gives the seller some funds to help offset the time that maybe they were off the market, that the buyer took them off the market hypothetically, right? And so earnest money has its place. It's very important in the transaction. And one of those things too, there's plenty of rules that follow earnest money. So buyers will go under contract today. And let's say that on the purchase contract, they had indicated that they'll make the deposit within 3 days. That's 3 business days per the contract. And it's super important that the buyer complies with the timeline. So it's up to the buyer or buyer's broker, depending on how that works out, to get that earnest money to the escrow company to get it deposited and receipted. The buyer says they're going to do that in the contract. And if you don't comply with the timelines, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, then what will happen too is the seller has to be notified that the buyer did not deposit earnest money on time, and therefore then the seller has the potential to terminate the contract until the earnest money deposit is cured, and with language surrounding that protects both the buyer and seller, saying that the earnest money deposit was late, and here's why. So it's super important. Earnest money has a super vital role in the real estate transaction, and probably will forever. So there's your little recap on earnest money.